everybody. We're at the Imp and the Ogre. My name is Paul.
This is Ryan.
Today we are going to be going back to our roots and complaining about White Plume Mountain.
So yes, this is Module S2, White Plume Mountain by Lawrence Schick. It's a first edition D&D adventure for PC levels in the 5 to 10 range. It was originally published in 1980. And you can find the original on the DM's Guild if you want to pick up a copy for yourself. So, brief synopsis of this adventure. Some magic items are stolen, apparently by a 13-year-old wizard, or 1300-year-old. 13-year-old wizard would be completely different. 1300-year-old wizard by the name of Caraptus. Mm-hmm. The PCs are hired to retrieve said items, and a dungeon crawl ensues. So before I bias you, your general impressions, sir.
I mean, my final impressions that I wrote down seemed like it was okay, but I guess when I'm reading through my notes, all I really have notes on is the magical weapons and like the brief fights that you do in like one encounter. So I think it's like mostly forgettable. The theme stayed true to itself, that you're in a volcano. I think that's like the one thing that I can like say with confidence is that like it stayed true to its theme. And if there's anything that I like about adventures is like if you can stay true to your theme, like thank you. But I think it was mostly a forgettable adventure, and I don't know if I would run it.
Well, you're much more generous than I was. The first thing I've written in my notes here is that it's awful. And I might be a bit harsh, but I am going to stand by that to a certain extent. I know this is ranked as one of the best D&D adventures of all time, but it's a hard pass for me. The setup for it I found incredibly weak. It's a very flimsy structure behind it. Now, granted, it's a funhouse dungeon, and for those who don't know, which if you're listening to this, I'd be surprised if you didn't know, but funhouse dungeons are basically dungeons that are designed around fun encounters and clever encounters, and aren't concerned too much about the dungeon ecology or anything like that. Like once you're in the dungeon doesn't necessarily have to have internal sense, which I'm not a big fan of in general, but I think if the adventure had a stronger premise, I'd be less harsh in my assessment of it. Frankly, the whole thing just feels like a bunch of disjointed rooms that were stuck together for kicks. Like, let's see how cool of an encounter I can make. Here's one. Let's make another cool encounter.
Right. Yeah.
Here's one. Now, some of the encounters are cool, but frankly, I even prefer the Tomb of Horrors to this adventure, and I don't like the Tomb of Horrors that much at all. So, I don't know. It's all supposed to be a design around good and fun challenges. I'm not sure all the challenges in this are even fun from a player standpoint, so I don't even know how much you'd enjoy playing it at all. Okay. Honestly, my favorite part of the whole adventure was the hand-drawn map of the area that's inside of it. Not the dungeon layout, like the picture of the mountain, and then like this is the swamp over here. And, here be dragons, right? Like it's my favorite part of the whole thing, which might be a little harsh, but like
the map was cool though.
The map was very nice. I enjoyed that a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna complain about it a lot, but I really didn't like it. Of all the adventures we've done so far, this is the one that I had the most difficulty just forcing my way through it. So in terms of getting started or the hook, I wrote worst hook ever.
I mean, there is no hook. It just assumes that you've been hired and then you're at the entrance of the mountain. Well,
no, there's a premise behind it. So 3 ridiculously powerful magical items have been stolen. Right? And the players get hired to retrieve these magic items. I don't like this at all. Now, first, I don't like the trope in D&D that like really powerful magic are just out of circulation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're either in a dungeon somewhere, or they're forgotten, or they're in a collector's collection. Like, who are these people collecting intelligent, very dangerous magic items and then putting them on display? Right? I would actually prefer a situation where the wielder of said item was killed and his item was taken. Right?
Yeah.
Like, Sir Steve of the whatever, was killed, and his magical sword, the Lightbringer, has gone missing. Lightbringer's on loan to was on loan to Sir Steve by the noble order of the whatever's,
yeah.
right? The flaming unicorns, or however you want to think about it, and the church wants it back. Like, to me, I think that makes a lot of sense from a sort of world building standpoint, is that really powerful magical items should be used, and you should know who has them, right?
Yeah.
I totally see situations where religious orders have magical relics that their champions get to wield, and when the champion dies, you're just like, okay, it goes to like
Champion 2,
right? You want them in circulation because they're powerful objects of good or evil, but like the idea that they constantly just get locked away in vaults so some noble can say, ooh, that's pretty. Like, yeah, I don't doubt that is a reasonable occurrence for some things, but you're gonna draw thieves like nobody's business, because if you know that you have it in your collection, they're gonna want to take it. Also, I don't understand the appeal of just collecting those types of things, dangerous items, if you will. But anyways, they all got stolen, and for whatever reason, there's no information about who stole them for like a week. So there's a little note in the adventure about, oh yeah, the whole town's been flipped over, inside out, and people have been flogged and tortured to try to find what happened to them, and thieves' guilds have been ransacked, and yada, yada, yada. And then 3 notes with I'll be more generous, with poems on them, I'll drop some of my adjectives, are delivered mysteriously to these owners. I can't remember if I actually wrote down the whole thing because it bugged me. But it's a riddle as to where the magic items might be. And scholars have gone over the poor rhyme scheme and figured out that it's probably White Plume Mountain. And if it's White Plume Mountain, maybe it's this wizard, Caraptus, who no one's heard anything of for 1300 years.
Yeah, the poems are stupid. Yeah.
I'm trying to be more generous. It was a simpler time in 1980. People didn't know how to rhyme. But Mike, from a standpoint, it's like, if the whole point is to steal magic items and then taunt, because the poem seems to imply that, like, oh yeah, I got them, send people to come and get them back. Just say that. Be like, hey, rich guy, I have your magic items. Send people to come and get it back, or you'll never see them again. Ha 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 ha. Right? Like, like, couldn't you think? I can think of like a million better ways to get heroes to show up to your dungeon if that's what you want. Hire somebody to hire heroes to show up at your dungeon. Like why the middleman, right? Make a bunch of fake maps to fabulous treasure and just throw them everywhere.
Yeah.
Also, why does he want people to come to his dungeon?
I don't know. Maybe he's bored.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Like, no reason is given.
Well, he hasn't been up to much in 1300 years because there's not much in the dungeon either.
He's not even in the dungeon. Right. Also, the idea here is that the PCs have been hired to go recover these items. How much were they hired for? Doesn't say. What were they hired for? Doesn't say. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're just like, oh yeah, here, go do this for me.
For what? Yeah.
Like,
what? Yeah, I guess you could just take the magic items at the end of it.
Oh, I have that written down there, like, for sure. Like, there's no way that they're being paid enough money to justify giving these items back.
Yeah.
These items are all universally amazing. Ain't giving them back.
Yeah.
Be like, unless they get paid like 100,000 gold pieces, I just be like, no. And even at 100,000 gold pieces, I think these 3 items are worth more than 100,000 gold pieces collectively.
Yeah.
So,
tough cookies. Yeah.
Right? Never going back to that town. Ugh.
Ugh, indeed.
Ugh. Hated all of it so much.
There's really dumb things in here. I mean, like, so the hook is bad.
I mean, there's better ways of getting... Like, I have nothing against the concept of there being, say, an evil wizard that's created deadly traps and just wants to test them out.
Yeah.
Right? Literally, that in and of itself is a better hook. Pamphlets around town, designing lair. Okay, want to test out deadly traps.
Have you ever wanted to be a lair playtester?
That's exactly. You could literally just be like looking for people to, and just be like, successful completion results in big money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just flat out say what the point is. Challenge my dungeon of doom for the chance to win 50,000 gold pieces, and just let people run through the meat grinder, right?
Yeah. Huh.
You need to sort of have like an entrance requirement. Defeat the ogre. You must defeat this many ogres to be able to take the dungeon, right? Like, you could set it up so more logically. Or I want to say better, right? I mean, everyone's mileage varies on this type of thing, but from just a hook standpoint and a structure standpoint, you don't need it to be this convoluted. Right? Like, the theft of the magic items adds nothing to the adventure.
It's true.
At all.
Especially because you don't know the people that own them in the first place.
You know, it would be
there's no investment, right?
I think it would just be funnier if 3 of your magic items got stolen.
Yeah.
Right? And your motivation to get them back is they're your magic items and you want them back.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, honestly, I really feel that the only reason this adventure is so beloved is that the magic items are so cool and everybody remembers the magic items more than the adventure itself.
Yeah, the magic items are ridiculous.
So I'm just getting caught up on the intro to it, and I may complain again at the end here, but we might as well talk about the adventure, the dungeon itself.
Yeah. Well, like you said, the dungeon is full of room after room after room of puzzles, basically, and challenges for the players. The first thing that I have down here is the 9 orbs with 9 treasures and 9 keys.
No, the hanging room. I have that down too. I want to complain about the entrance before we get to it, because that's the first room inside. Getting into the dungeon itself is problematic.
What, the little cave with the mud?
Ugh, yes. I guess just to get even before then, there's a little town with a little bit of detail provided. You can get some rumors, and then you go to this lonely mountain-style volcano in the middle of nowhere, and I can't remember if, in town you can find out about the cave. I think you do. Like, I don't think finding...
You just ask and they're like, that's it up there.
Yeah. I don't think there's... Finding the entrance isn't part of the adventure. It's just expected that you'll find it. But inside this cave and the side of this smoking, caldera, it's all covered in a couple of inches of mud, and the entrance to the dungeon is it's a trapdoor under the mud.
Yeah.
Right? So you gotta look for the mud, and the thing is, you open the trapdoor, all the mud dumps inside the dungeon. Does anybody ever talk about that? No. Who designs a dungeon like this? It just poor drainage. Bugs me so much. Right? And then what was the thing? Oh, to even open the door, the trapdoor is like swollen shut with moisture from all the mud. You need 3 PCs with 16 strength. If you don't have 3 PCs with 16 strength, not getting in through that trapdoor. How else do you get in? You don't.
That can be in his note that he sends out.
Must be at least this strong.
Yeah, exactly. You need a feat of strength. Can you lift this stone? If you can lift this stone, ye be worthy.
Must have at least 3 people that can
must
lift
have friends. Do you and 2 friends want to come on an adventure?
Yeah.
Can you each lift this stone? Then you are eligible.
You might just be what we're looking for. Right, so why? And
Caraptus wants you.
And then you go, what else is in there? Oh, right, and there's a Gyno Sphinx behind a wall of force.
Yeah.
So to get in, you have to answer a riddle, which we just did Mud Sorcerer's Tomb, where I was complaining about puzzles, so we can complain about it again, is that if you can't answer the riddle, you don't get to do the dungeon. All right, and the riddle's not particularly difficult, but if your players can't figure it out, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Something about the moon. The answer's the moon or something.
Yeah. So the answer's the moon, but I can't remember the dinner plate in the sky type of clue or whatever. But once again, like, why is this here?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? Like most of the time reading through this, my thought was, what is the point of this, and how is this fun?
Yeah.
So I can't think of the point of having a Sphinx with a riddle.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not fun.
Yeah.
So it's a double no from me. I mean, the Wall of Force comes to play again at the end of the dungeon, so we'll revisit that again. But like, okay, let's make it easy to get into this dungeon. Like, it's not hard. It's just inconvenient and potentially impossible depending on your party. Right? A bunch of 5th level PCs might just be stuck at this point. Anyway, so the room beyond the Gyno Sphinx and mud everything is the
treasure room,
the hanging sphere room, your key room, if you want to talk about it.
Well, I just thought it was kind of dumb. Well, like, you got there's 9 orbs that hold 9 keys. One of the keys is like ultra powerful, and as soon as you pick it up, you know the abilities of the key, which include invisibility, haste. It's a ring of protection and protection from charm.
It's a ring. That's the ring. Yeah. It's not the key.
Right.
So the way this room works is the door that you come in through locks behind you, and you can't open it without a key. Mm-hmm. So because reasons. Like, magic doesn't work on it. It can't be picked. Why? Because reasons, right? So you need to get the key out of one of the orbs. So like you're saying, the orbs have a bunch of keys in them. They have some random treasure. One of them or 2 of them have like monsters in them. I think there's shadows in one of them.
Yeah.
So you got to smash them to
get the stuff.
But
okay, yeah. So one of them is this ring, and
it talks.
Yeah.
It's once you put it on, it tells you what it does. Yeah. So I'm a super awesome ring. I do all of these cool things. You should totally take me.
Blah blah blah. Tons of stuff. But it also tells you that once it's on, you can't take it off. You lose an HP a year or whatever it is, which is like, in your head, you're thinking that's nothing for all these powers. But as soon as you leave the room, it loses all these powers. And so the whole point of this room is to promote player versus player conflict.
Yeah, immediately.
Which is like,
because I think the pressure is you have to put me on right now.
Yeah, it's like you need to make the decision now. Someone needs to wear it. So you're just creating this massive player conflict, which would probably inevitably lead into player PvP, which is, I mean, take it for a grain of salt, whatever, your players could end up fighting. But the moment that you leave, it loses all its powers, right? So
it's designed conflict at the table initially. And again, like, if you're dealing with the note I made here is, if you're playing with your group of friends, right? Like, you've been playing with these players for forever, this isn't going to be an issue.
Yeah.
If you're playing this at a convention or in a game store in an open table, they don't know anybody, right? Like, it's just designed to start things off negatively, and I didn't care for that either.
Yeah.
I found it very cruel.
I also wondered, like, the ring gives you a wish as well. So, like, what if you've already played this adventure, you could just cheat and metagame it. But what if you're just like, I wish this ring always had these powers?
Yeah, it's D&D wishes, right? Like, there's only you can't wish for anything. You only wish for like certain things. So I don't know if it actually outlined what happens if you want to use that ability.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was kind of foolish, and I don't know if I agree with just actively promoting that, like player PvP. But
Well, that's the whole point, though. It's like
Yeah.
room. It's the PvP room. Let's
Yeah.
see if we can get the players to do PvP. Oh, they didn't. Let's move on to the next room.
which is the floating wooden disc room, I think.
Yeah, the hanging. Yeah, that one with the thing, the platforms dangling over the boiling mud and geysers.
Yeah. See, I didn't mind this challenge because I enjoy stacking like cumulative penalties. And I think the idea was that the farther away you are from the geyser, you have a larger percentage of falling off, which is, I don't mind that as like a mechanic, that there's a cumulative stacking or cumulative bonus to doing it. So
I like this room as a concept. I have no idea how to execute it because there's no information provided about how the players actually move from swinging platform to swinging platform.
yeah.
The geysers are on timers,
Yeah.
3 minutes and 5 minutes. So that means time matters, and the platforms are slick, so balance matters.
Yeah.
But none of that information is included in this. All it is like, if you are this close to the geyser when it goes off, roll a dice.
Yeah.
If you fall off, you die.
Yeah.
Right? So as a design, I think there's merit, right? Your players should watch the timing. They should figure out how quickly they have to go and blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
But how you actually adjudicate that at the table fairly, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Right? Because it takes 3 minutes to go. I mean, and part of this is going back to, I don't even know, like, aren't 5th edition rounds like 10 minutes? I mean, 5th edition, 1st edition rounds are like 10 minutes. So, like, how do you time out the movement? You know what I mean? Like, and then jumping from thing to thing, which in and of itself seems really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I just wrote down, like, cast fly. And just, like,
Yeah.
most of what happens in here is completely negated by magic.
Yeah.
Right? All you need is a wizard to cast fly, and then it's like, and off we go.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about this, or airwalk, or any of the other. It's even, the room's even small enough that you just like dimension door pop people
True.
across. So I didn't care for the fact that even in the adventure there wasn't enough enough nuts and bolts information provided
Yeah.
to actually run the encounter. Like, it was very much like, look at this cool encounter. Now figure out how you're supposed to adjudicate this as a DM. And that bugged me. I like it. I mean, as a, American Gladiator style challenge,
Yeah.
I think it is fine.
I wonder if there's like an assumption when this is written that there's like mastery of the rules.
Possibly.
Like that the DM would know that if you're on a slick surface and you're jumping, or something. Like, I don't know, because there's not a lot of hand holding. Like you're saying, there's no information to fill in the gaps. So it doesn't explicitly say what your penalties are, or how you would get to one thing, but perhaps.
Well, it's also first edition didn't have a lot of rules for things. Right? Like as rule bloat is sort of, capped out in 3rd edition, and then it's sort of come down since then. But there may not be rules, and you just sort of were supposed to figure it out at the table. I don't know. And I'm not an expert on 1st edition whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I can't say. I just know, like, by itself, I couldn't run that encounter by just looking at it.
I agree. Yeah.
Right? I'd have to look up a lot of rules and plan out a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And anyways, so that was a fine puzzle, I guess. I don't know.
The next major thing that I have is the vampire, which I said is unremarkable, but that's where you find your first magical item.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I even mentioned the vampire. I was so irritated with it.
I just said vampire encounter is unremarkable, but the hammer is.
Yeah, so the vampire encounter, once again, there's a vampire that it doesn't do anything unless you interact with it because magic reasons. The main gimmick of this encounter is there's basically stone grating, which allows the vampire to turn gaseous and get away from you whenever it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
So defeating it's very, very difficult to do. Even finding the hammer, I guess it's what it is, right? It's the hammer. It's whelm.
Whelm, yeah.
So finding the hammer, it's in a niche underneath the sarcophagus.
Uh-huh.
How are you even going to find it? Right? Like the other two are just like laying out in the open.
Yeah.
But this one is underneath the coffin of a vampire. It's not like in the coffin. It's you got to move the coffin or sarcophagus, whatever it is, out of the way to find the little cubby hole to find, some gems and this awesome hammer.
Yeah.
Also, I do enjoy whenever you come across an early edition vampire and how brutal early edition vampires are. Level drain, man. Like, just ruin everybody's day.
Yeah.
Because you fight this vampire and you're no longer a 5th level fighter. You're a 1st level fighter for a long time, effectively. So, do you want to talk about the weapons at the end? Or do you want to talk about the weapons as we come across them? Because they're all super cool, and I do want to talk about the weapons. Because frankly, the only reason to...
we can talk about them at the end. We can just jump through the dungeon, because I don't think the dungeon is worthy, I guess. I don't know. Like, there's not that much to it. So we can talk about the weapons at the end, I guess. We can just do them all at once. I think you have lots of notes on them. So
I have lots of notes of them. I just wrote them down because I like to...
The next encounter that I have for the dungeon is the crab encounter underneath the membranous lake.
I think I don't even know if I put that in here. Give me a second. I have a couple things to talk about in the dungeon before then. So,
go on.
So there's a secret door that leads nowhere because it's not in the It's not in the adventure. It's to Caraptus's indoctrination center, which is a thing that apparently needs to exist in the adventure as a concept, but not as a real place. So the expectation is that the players are never going to find this, but I needed to put it in there because of reasons, because this adventure needs to make sense. It already doesn't make sense. So that just bugged me. I mean, it's you gotta you need to be super strong, and you need to open a valve that's underwater to drain the water. The floor, there's a secret door that leads to a part of the dungeon that doesn't exist in the adventure. So will they find it? I don't know. Detect secret doors is a spell, so maybe.
Yeah.
Right? It's not impossible that they find something that doesn't exist. And I don't like that. Once again, my usual complaint for this type of thing is if I'm buying an adventure, I don't want the adventure to be like, if they do find this, make something up. It's just like, no.
Tell me,
or don't put it in there, right? Like,
Yeah.
I just paid money for this. Tell me what happens. So that bugged me. And then before you get to the giant crab thing, there's the oily spiral tube of doom that you can go into.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a funhouse spinning cylinder that is covered in oil. So you're likely to slip and fall and slide down it. And then once people are inside of it, it gets lit on fire by randos that take care of the animals in here. By the help, effectively.
Yeah.
So I don't know the outcome of that. Odds are you get burned a little bit as you slide out.
Yeah.
And then you get attacked by Burkett, who...
Nice name.
Doesn't know anything, and Snarla, which is the worst type of pun because she's a werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
So Snarla, she snarls because she's a vampire. I mean, a vampire. She's a werewolf.
Well, the other monster's name is Burkett.
Oh, he's a person. They're both people.
But like briquettes from a barbecue.
That's briquettes.
Briquettes? Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm like reasonably sure. Anyways, the hand wavy explanation for them being here is that they feed the hell, they feed the monsters. Where they get the food for feeding the monsters, shrug. Adventurers that come to explore. What I dislike about these two, they're combat encounters. Like, the expectation is that you fight them. Mm-hmm. But these are the only two individuals in the entire dungeon. Well, I guess not the only two. But there's very few creatures in this dungeon that can talk. These are the only two human-ish creatures that if you capture them and try to interrogate them, they just have gaps in their memory. They just don't know. How'd you get here? We don't know. Why do you do this? We don't know. Like, they just are useless from a source of information. So for me, why include them at all? Right? Why isn't it just an ogre or a trap or a golem or whatever, right? Like, it just seems to me like it's designed to be frustrating to your players. Like, they go through the trouble of keeping one of them alive because let's figure out what's going on, and they're just like, I don't know. Like, to me, if I was playing this adventure, I'd find that incredibly frustrating.
Well, it feels like it was written by someone that really had, I don't know, no business writing an adventure. It doesn't make sense, any of it, right? It just feels lazy.
I might be wrong, but I feel like I read someplace that this adventure was basically submitted as a resume to get hired by TSR, and this guy did get hired by TSR, so
yeah,
apparently he's really good at writing adventures. I just disagree with what makes a good adventure.
Yeah.
At least what made a good adventure in 1980.
And he made cool weapons.
Very cool weapons. So I found, like, the Burkett and Snarl, I'm like, why are they a werewolf? I keep saying vampire because the vampire, but why are they a werewolf? Mm-hmm. And there's some random other stuff in there, but for me, most of the time going through this adventure, I was like, what's the point of this? And it's supposed to be a quote unquote funhouse dungeon, but there's not a lot of fun in it. From a DM standpoint, mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of difficulty and adjudication of how to play things out.
Yeah,
and that ties in as well to the giant crab and the ladder, or whatever you want to think of it as, the rubber room. That you want to cover this?
Oh, I kind of like the crab encounter. Initially, I didn't. I thought it was really dumb, and that they were fighting under a lake with a membrane, and a
lake full of boiling water.
But I sort of changed my mind a little bit because, again, it has like an environmental effect to it. Mm-hmm. So I'm a sucker to that. If you're careless with what you're doing in the room, you can puncture the membrane.
Yeah.
Which is like...
And you all die.
Yeah, like hand wave the idea of it. But I like that if you're kind of careless in this room, you can think yourself, that's what I like about it. I don't know if I like the encounter per se, but...
So to set up the encounter, there's I think they describe it as the largest crab you've ever seen, in, what's it, like a rubbery force field?
Sorry, yeah.
Is the way they describe it. But basically, imagine a giant inflated balloon of air that's holding back a boiling lake of water, mm-hmm. and the crab's in there. The crab has a magic item that prevents it from being charmed or anything like that. So you basically have to fight it. And this is where you find Wave, I believe, the trident magic item that's been stolen. So you got to fight the giant crab. The crab knows not, it's been trained to fight carefully. So it never has to worry about damaging the membrane. But it says, as you mentioned, that PCs can't fight recklessly. And this is, the option, blah, blah, blah. The suggestions for things that can't be done include using two-handed weapons, mm-hmm. or flashy spells like Fireball. And I hear what you're saying, where, creating an interesting environment to fight in that has restrictions is cool. I did like that it's all about DM adjudication.
Mm-hmm.
So as a DM, I have to sit there and be like, yes, you can do that. No, you can't do that.
Mm.
Yes, you can do... Nope. Or is that too much, right? Like,
yeah.
The difficulty of this room is completely based around how lenient you are as a DM.
Like if you shoot an arrow and miss the crab, do you hit the membrane?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, of course. Like, there's nothing else to hit.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then you're suddenly saying like, oh, well, did it hit him and not do damage because of its armor? Or did you miss completely?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm all about fiddly rules. So to me, instead of being like, oh, sweet, like, we'll just let it happen, I wouldn't be that type of person. I'm just not that type of DM. So it gets into the weeds a little bit of, well, what's reasonable, what's not reasonable, what can be used, what can't be used. If you're too permissive, then the whole point of the room doesn't matter, right? Because if all your players can use all of their normal attacks as they would in any other encounter, then this is a pointless room. It's just you're fighting a crab. Okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, you don't want to be too punitive. You don't want to be like, oh, well, you can't do anything. Well, that's not fun either, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, the idea of the environmental effects are good, but I don't think I like this encounter. So
now, what I did like is it mentions in here is a lot of the issues with the water can be overcome from the abilities of the trident itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be kind of hilarious to just cast protection from like fire on you.
Yeah.
And then sneak in there, grab the trident and just puncture the thing on purpose, cook the crab, and then just swim out because you have the heat resistance.
Well, that's sort of like one of the solutions that they give you to this encounter, isn't it? That you can get the weapon, you can create a wall of force around yourself and get ejected through the roof of the volcano.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So if you puncture the membrane and manage to get the magical weapon, Wave can create a barrier, some kind of thing of protection, and then you can get launched out of the volcano through a steam vent that the lake produces. Yeah.
Which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah. So like that, I mean...
Of course, then you have to come all the way back to get the last magic item, but...
Can you even carry on once the thing is punctured?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look at the map.
So yeah, that could be interesting. That's why I said getting shot out of the volcano could be a good exit for the adventurers. So yeah, I'll see you later. The next kind of thing that... the copper plates that heat up and you move through them.
Oh, right. Like the induction oven that you're basically in. I forgot about that one.
Like it's nothing to like rave about, but I liked that one, if you're wearing armor, you take more damage.
The further in, the hotter it gets.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So I like that, again, like a cumulative environmental effect that if you're wearing armor, you take more damage, or you can't move through, or you can't hold your weapons, or you take more damage from getting farther into the oven, basically.
And I think the whole design of it is to basically force you out of your armor. So when you get into a fight on the other side, you're not wearing armor or carrying your items. Your weapons or whatnot, which was all right. And there's a frictionless room in here too, right?
Yeah, that was the other one that I made note of. I think it's also like not that notable. I mean, it's just literally a room that there's no friction in, so you can't stand on the walls, you can't put your hand on the walls, you can't do anything. So you can troubleshoot your way across it by like setting up ropes and sliding across, basically. But I guess it's neat. It goes along with the funhousey.
Well, both of those rooms I think are good from a funhouse thing. They're not inherently deadly, so they're not super punished for experimentation.
Yeah.
They're interesting. They're interesting challenges for the players to overcome, and I think that's what you'd expect from a funhouse dungeon, right? Like, I don't dislike them whatsoever. Right? I didn't actually make a note of them because I thought they were fine.
Yeah, it was just like one sentence.
There's the floating river connected rooms.
Is that with the kayaks you can jump in?
You have to take the kayaks.
Yeah.
Because the only way between, I can't remember, there are 2 or 3 rooms, is there's a stream that's suspended in air that exits rooms through holes. So you got to get in the kayaks and then take the boats from one room to another room. The imagery behind that I thought was very cool. The encounter where you get ambushed with nets and a knight and his soldiers in the next room, I'm just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the net capture aspect, again, I think that's totally fine. Having monsters in there to ambush people, sure.
Yeah.
I think that was okay. The thing that sort of made my hackles raise up was that it's like a random disgraced knight, that's now working in this dungeon, but his memory's been erased, so he doesn't remember anything. And there's a note in the adventure that like the player should know who this guy is. You're like, oh, it's Sir Bluto or whatever it is. He ran afoul of the authorities because of reasons, right? And again, I'm like, this would work so much better if it was just blatantly a wizard hiring people to work in the dungeon aspect of it. Like if there was more of a reason for this to exist as a place other than like, I'm crazy and I want to see what happens in here. I'd probably have less of a problem with it. But for things like this, I'm like, why is this guy here? Right? Like what
I guess they tried hard to like make reasons for things to be there when they could have just made no reasons for anybody to be there except for the fact that they were hired to be there.
Yeah.
It's like he's just on shift at the Volcano Carnival.
It doesn't have to be anybody, right? Like it could just be some random flunky number 3. And I'd have less of an issue with that.
Yeah.
And then my general complaint is like, why have intelligent humanoids in here if you can't actually deal with them intelligently? Right? They could also be automatons. Right? Why you just replaced everything with like zombies or skeletons or whatever? It would bug me a lot less.
I also don't like that there's nothing going on in this place. Like he went in there 1300 years ago with a gnome army, I think it says in the beginning. But it's like, what were they doing? Like there's no, like it's not a factory of any kind. This
adventure poses, leaves you with more questions than answers.
Yeah, there's no descriptive of the rooms. It's just like kind of stuff is just there.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you could have done better.
Just expect more
maybe
these days than people did years ago.
I mean, I guess if this was like one of the adventures ever, it was like the first times you'd ever even heard of D&D, like I guess it could be pretty thick, right? Things under a volcano, stuff happening. But now that we have so much history and like retrospective knowledge, that now you're reading it and you're just like, well, why is that there? That doesn't make any sense. This doesn't fit thematically.
Yeah, I think it's funny that like I normally complain about like 5th edition being overly narrative, but now I'm complaining about something not being narrative enough. So obviously there's a sweet spot that I look for.
I need a reason for us to be here.
Well, I think I mentioned it before, but I look for internal logic.
Yeah.
If it's consistent internally, I don't care how crazy it is. But when it's not internally logical, I don't know.
Like you brought all these gnomes. Why couldn't this to like crazy gnome inventions?
It could all just be automatons.
That's what I mean. Like that they'd been in there just like cooking up inventions this whole time, and then all this stuff starts to make sense a little bit.
Yeah.
But where are the gnomes?
Oh, they're all dead. Who knows? Turned into lava. What else are we getting? Oh, the ogre mage. And the only reason I want to mention the ogre mage is because this is where you find the last weapon, Black Razor. It's under a divan. It's not even like hidden. It's just like stuffed under a couch. It made me so angry to read that. I'm like, why isn't the ogre mage using the scariest weapon in this whole dungeon? Because reasons?
The thing that also bugged me about this weapon is that, I mean, I guess we could talk about Black Razor now if we wanted to. But
I want to talk about the ogre mage briefly before, and then we can get to that if you want. So again, Ogre Mage is here because it lost a bet to Caraptus and now has to guard treasure for 100 years or whatever it said in there.
Yeah.
So again, we have an intelligent creature that actually apparently dealt with Caraptus, could provide information regarding Caraptus, but we have like none in there. So what are you supposed to do if the players capture the Ogre Mage and want him to answer questions? Invent the villain, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Which bugged me a lot. Right? Because I don't even think that's something that would be unexpected for players to do. Right? Enough players that I've played with that are willing to take prisoners to get information and all of that type of stuff. That especially in a situation like this where you're just trying to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the only creature that like flat out says in the adventure that has met the wizard, could provide information on the wizard, and we aren't given any information to pass along.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the chance that the players take this creature hostage or capture him, he knows blah blah blah.
Yep.
I guess he also starts off looking like a halfling. So there's totally opportunity to converse with this creature before the fight starts, and there's just no real information provided there.
True.
So all I got left is the exit ambush and the magic items. If you want to talk about the magic items, you can come back to the thingy-majiggo. Exit ambush at the end if you want.
Go in the order that we've discovered them in, I guess.
Sure.
Whelm is the first weapon that you find from the vampire. It is a dwarven weapon. Has a couple cool abilities on it. So the thing that I liked about all these magical weapons is they all were intelligent. They all had purpose, meaning they had a task that they wanted to fulfill. Whelm's was that it liked to kill trolls, giants, and goblins. Has a few abilities. It can be thrown up to 150 feet once a day. Thought that was pretty amazing. It can create a...
It returns to...
Yeah, it's like a Thor hammer. It can create a big shockwave if you hit it in the ground. But it does have penalties as well. So you're fighting at a -2 on rolls if you're fighting in open spaces. It can detect gold, gems, and the presence of goblins. I just like the theme to all these weapons. It was designed by dwarves. It was meant to be used underground and in caves. It was meant to fight the enemies of dwarves, and you suffer penalties if you're using it outside those conditions.
Yeah. Also, I mean, they're all intelligent, which I always enjoy because that means they have a goal. And if the wielder is not working towards the goal, then the weapon's working against them.
And I mean, Whelm is probably the most good out of all these weapons.
Which is probably why it's the hardest to find.
Yeah, and you could use this as a weapon all the time, or at least have it with you all the time. The other two, probably not.
Oh, if I had Black Razor, I'd never stop using it.
Yeah. So we can jump to Wave, I guess.
Yeah, so the one you get from the giant crab. It's a trident. I didn't write down all the details of it. I literally had some random other abilities.
So the trident is evil, and its purpose is willing death and disfigurement to all those who won't convert to worship of Poseidon.
Yeah, I did write that down. I think that's awesome because to use it, you have to convert, or whatever water deity that's setting appropriate.
Yeah.
But basically, to use it, you have to say you convert to the worship of
water god,
whatever water god that this trident was, or it won't work for you.
And then basically you'd have to have a condition where you'd be compelled to attack anyone that wouldn't worship them as well, because you want to kill them or disfigure them.
Yep.
And I think this crit ability on the trident is amazing.
Oh, the natural 20? Yeah.
If you roll a 20 on it, it'll dehydrate the enemy, draining 1/2 of its remaining hit points. I think that's pretty...
That's all. Oh, yeah.
Incredible. If you could get around it wanting to kill everybody that won't worship what you worship, then you could make use of it somehow.
Oh, you just make it work.
Yeah, you just make it work. And I think Black Razor is probably the best and most evilest of the bunch for sure.
Yeah, my description is awesome, is super evil, and eats souls.
Yeah. It likes to kill souls. So the killing stroke adds the number of levels of the enemy and fighting ability to its wielder.
And temporary hit points.
And hit points. And adds its hit points to the kill. So if you had 20 hit points and I killed you, I gained 20 temporary hit points. Those killed by it cannot be raised back from the dead. Every 3 days, its ego increases. So I guess there's ego scores in these.
Yeah, so the way at least magic items used to work is that the stronger personality is, the higher the ego score. And the ego score is what's used when it wants to control the wielder. So basically, the longer that Black Razor goes without killing something, the stronger it becomes, and the more likely it is to just take over your body and force you to kill something.
So, I mean, this is the only problem I had with this weapon is like, okay, this was sitting in a museum, ? Or like where it was. How did it not compel someone to do evil to that point? And then the only other cool thing, or the other cool thing about this weapon is because it's evil, if you attack undead with it, all its abilities are reversed.
Oh, yeah, because it drains positive energy.
Yeah.
So if you attack something with negative energy, it sucks the life out of you.
Yeah.
And you can die, which
Yeah.
is kind of hilarious. And I do remember there was a note in there. It's like, you could tell your player that it does this or not.
Yeah.
So I did like it. I mean, I think, honestly, these 3 weapons are all iconic. They're all awesome. Anyone individually would be a major thing to have in a campaign, and to have all 3 of them in your party is bonkers.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the power level of them. I think, the expectation to a certain extent is that these are given back to their collectors, but not a chance. Like, I'm telling you, if I'm playing and I get Black Razor, I'm now just a murder hobo for hire. Like, just non-stop, because it's super
powerful and awesome.
Like, just, you'd be the world's greatest soldier. Just, you know how many hit points you could stack up?
Oh, yeah. Yep. You'd just be unstoppable.
So they're all super, super cool. So if you find all 3 there's 3 weapons, the adventure is done.
Or is it?
You're just supposed to leave. And in leaving, there's an optional encounter. Like, it flat out spells out that if your players have had a rough time in here, well, then just
skip it.
Skip this.
Or if it's been too easy,
make it harder.
Yeah.
But the encounter is like, as you leave, that Wall of Force by the Gyno Sphinx comes into play again, and Ifriti come and attack you. You hear a disembodied voice of Charybdis, who invites you to join his team and invites you to go to his indoctrination center. And if your players say yes, then they're never heard of again, and fade to black, adventure over. If you say no, then these 2 Ifriti are sent to fight you, to force you to go there, and you kill them, and you win, and it is over. So you'd never get to find out anything about Charybdis whatsoever. You never meet him. You hear his disembodied voice, maybe, because it's an optional encounter. So you just go into a dungeon and kill a bunch of stuff. I just remembered a room I want to talk about. I don't know if I wrote it down. But the terraced one, where it's like the inverted pyramid with the steps down.
Oh, yeah, with the monsters on each level.
And each level has a different, like one level, it's aquatic monsters, and then terrestrial monsters, and then so you go from like an aquarium to a biome to an aquarium to a biome.
Yeah.
I appreciated the design of that. Again, I would just I cast fly on myself, and I just fly down to the bottom of it. But I thought it was kind of an interesting design. I think it would work better with maybe lower level PCs,
where you have to go through
where you have to go ramp to ramp and deal with everything. But anyways, to get back to the end here, is just, it found it very unsatisfying. Right, the magic items are awesome, but other than that, I mean, it's a very old school, go into a place, find some treasure. Using the first edition rules, this is first edition, I'm pretty sure you get experience points for treasure items, so you could gain a bunch of experience in there, because there's lots of coinage and what have you. But I don't know, when there's not a boss in a dungeon, it feels kind of anticlimactic to me. And you never really even deal with Charybdis. So you return the items, and then the next week the items are stolen again, and then there's another. It doesn't really get resolved due to the nature of the way it plays out. Right? You don't defeat anybody. He's still in the dungeon somewhere.
Yeah.
But because you're not supposed to, you're not really sent to kill him, there's no reason to find him. Not that there's any information. I mean, the expectation is you never find him because
Yeah.
there's no information provided about him. Presumably a lich of some sort, what they've been doing for the last 1,300 years
Mm-hmm.
with gnomes, apparently. Who knows? I don't know. So,
Would you run it?
no, not in a million years.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing in this other than stealing Black Razor as sort of a campaign item for kicks.
Yeah.
I can't see much. Not there's anything wrong with Wave or Whelm. I just don't think they're iconic enough that you need them. Like if I just
Yeah.
needed a super awesome item to give my players, yeah, sure, Whelm, why not?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's, but Black Razor you could build a whole thing about because it is so evil. It has such a negative downside.
Yeah.
You could definitely build a whole little mini arc about finding it, recovering it, and then like realizing that it's super bad and we need to destroy it and figuring out how to destroy it and
Yeah.
getting rid of it could be a whole thing in your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
The other two are just like cool items. And then of course at the end the whole point is your PCs are supposed to return these. I wouldn't. Like I said that more than once. Like how much would you have to be paid to give these back?
Way too much money than what they're actually worth. I mean, I don't really have much to say about this adventure. I wouldn't run it. I think that there's no motivation, and there's no bad guy. So
the payoff isn't there. Some of the rooms are fun. And I think if you went in with the mentality of this, we're just going to go do some random rooms. If you embrace the whole aspect of the Funhouse dungeon, sure. But I'd never run this as part of a campaign. It would just be, we're going to run White Plume Mountain because it's iconic and we're supposed to think it's great.
yeah.
So run it as an open table, go nuts. But I can't see, I would never run this for my, like any groups of my own type of thing.
Agree.
I don't think it's fun enough from what I enjoy.
Yeah.
Your mileage may vary, of course.
Yep. All right, guys. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can email us at theimpanogre@gmail.com or hit us on the Twitters at theimpanogre. Thanks for listening. Next week, we are going to tackle The Forge of Fury by Richard Baker. Bye.
Bye.